Hello, folks. Welcome to Don Odell's Legends. And tonight, we're going to be talking to a legend, Corky Laing. Great drummer, and we're gonna have fun. We're gonna have fun. Very nice to meet you, Corky.
Good to see
Mark
you, Mark.
Nomad.
Mark, nice to meet you. Nice to meet the legends,
Yep.
Don and the legends here. We're up in Massachusetts, and one of the best states ever.
Hey,
Am
thanks,
I
man.
looking at that camera or this camera?
It's more of just a conversation.
Okay.
Wherever you want, man. And
All right, go ahead.
First,
Yeah.
that camera.
So, Corky, I thought that there's so much to talk about, but I thought that we could just start with last night. I know you played B.B. King's in
Yeah.
Manhattan last night. How'd that go?
That was, as Donald Trump would say, it was terrific. It was terrific. No, it went really well. And, you know, it was the Oscars last night.
Right.
Did you know there was an eclipse yesterday?
That too? No, I missed.
No, a lot of things screwed up.
Wow.
We had it. Well, my pedal broke. I wouldn't call that a major event, but you know, the Oscars had that mess up.
Oh, yeah.
And it just seems like there was a lot
of weird stuff
disruption
happening.
And
They had a tornado right near where I live last night.
last night there was.
They never had one in Massachusetts.
Well, look
in
at the weather.
February.
Yeah, the weather we're having here. It was like if the trees were green, we'd be good. But anyway, so we had a great night at BB's. We had some friends come down. Ratso Sloman, who wrote the Bob Dylan book. We were just talking about that. And not a celebrity thing, a lot of really good characters, respectful characters. And it's good, because when you're in New York on that situation, we didn't think any celebrities were going to come, in being the Oscars and stuff. But we had a great time, and the boys in the band played beautifully. They really did.
Terrific. Well, we're looking forward to hearing you in a little
You'll
while.
hear that. That's right. That's just about, yeah.
Looking very forward to that. And also, before we start getting a little historical, I want to say that I just recently, I know it's been out for a few years, but I just recently saw you do your version of Like a Rolling Stone.
Right.
Which was, I got to say, man, I really dug it.
Oh, thank you.
And it was very
Thank you.
powerful. I mean, to be able to, I mean, it's poetry.
Yeah.
And you made it musical, and you, I mean, just voice and drums and Bob Dylan's poetry, and then you personalize it just a tad to make it more.
That's exactly what happened, Mark. Very perceptive, by the way. And you were talking about, you know, on the road with what's his name, and I was running at the Ratso Sloman, who's very close with Dylan, and he told me, he said that he was blown away by that. He never heard me do that, and I did that because we were in the sessions doing Masters of War, Mountain, 2008 and 9, and what happened is Warren Haynes for Government Mule came down, but Leslie couldn't make the session. So I said, why don't I just work on the drums? So I put the drums in the middle of the studio, and I started playing. And I remembered 40, 50 years ago when I had my local band, when I first heard Like a Rolling Stone.
Was that Energy?
Yeah, it was Energy, correct, yes. Thanks for reminding me on that. So I used to, we were a cover band, but we used to get the songs a lot for some reason. In Montreal, we had a radio station that somehow was pre-serviced a lot of the records, and I remember I got the, not Nashville Skyline, the one before that. So anyways, I get Like a Rolling Stone, so I started playing harmonica. And I did, you know, as a shtick, as they say in French, I did the harmonica and I played, and we had an organ player. We had an organ, bass, and drums. That was Energy. So there was no guitar. So we did Like a Rolling Stone, but I would put on the voice, you know, and I memorized the whole song, the whole thing, all 6, 8 verses.
Yeah.
And I remember it, and I never forgot it until we went into the studio 40 years later, and Warren Haynes says, you know, it's Masters of War, what song are you going to put the drums to? So he thought maybe Blowing in the Winds, but it was like that's feeling, you know, and Blown in the Wind, I don't know, couldn't feel it. So I started playing, and I had the mic live, and once upon a time I dressed so fine, and it was like, whoo, and we recorded. That was a take, and I just did it for fun, okay? And I remember Leslie came in later, I said, Les, listen, I put this down, maybe you want to put guitar on and make it work, you know, just put instruments on. And he said, no way. He said, that's freaking great.
Oh, that's
yeah. And I went, okay, and it's on the record. But I have to say, Mark, and this is what's really, is that with this band, it's really a lot of fun it's spoken word. And people don't get the song until, how does it feel? They go, wait a second, you know? And it's just, at the time, going back 40 years, I was in love with Keith Moon. Okay, not on a
Right, we
personal
understand.
level, but I wanted to be him. So on one hand, I had the drum thing, which I loved. I went to see Keith Moon when he first arrived in Montreal to do a tour. And I'm looking at him, and I want to be him. At the same time, I'd go home, and my sister, being a beach chick, and I listened to Dylan. And at the time, I was writing in Energy. I was writing lyrics, and I love writing. I very love it. I still love it. And I had drums, and I had Dylan, lyrics, drums, Keith, bop, bop, bop. So I was conflicted. So that's what sort of also played into doing that song.
You were
doing like a
conflicted,
Rolling
but you combined them to
yeah.
make a whole, and I think, and it's very powerful.
Thank you.
Very
thank you.
powerful. And you know, the thing is, you know, hip hop has been around, you know, for 40 plus years, but I mean, that was hip hop in its own way. I mean,
Totally.
the lyrics, you know, and it even goes back to like the Dirty Dozens and stuff. I mean, the spoken word like that is hip hop. And
really enjoyed that. That's it.
well, I was knocked out by it, and you know, it's not something that you hear every day.
No, as a matter of fact, in many cases, I was afraid. But at a certain point in your career, you don't get brave. You get, I don't give a crap anymore. You know, I'm just going to do. It wasn't a career move. It was just, I loved doing it. I love Dylan. I love the drum. And you know something? I could do anything I want in that song.
Yeah.
As long as I stay to the verses.
Yeah.
In between, depending on what the audience is feeling, I could go to the tom-toms and just move it, depending on how I felt.
That's
how
wonderful.
do you feel? Boom. Anyways, I'm going on
Terrific.
about it because
very
I love it.
powerful
Yeah,
and very, very cool, very
Thank you.
expressive, and you made it your own. And actually, Corky, Energy and Montreal are a good place to begin our historical journey.
Okay,
I
we're
think. Now,
taking
I
the
did not
journey.
know
Well, yeah.
that you were from Montreal. I always figured you were from Long Island too.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. You see, you have a, you know, obviously you spent a lot of time in New York.
Yeah.
And Montreal is a truly world-class city. I saw the Stones and Stevie Wonder there in '72. But it's a great city. But so you're in this band called Energy.
Yes.
And that you had an association with Felix Pappalardi in that band?
Felix.
Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah, in capsule form, if I may. I had a manager, Bud Prager, in New York through actually Jay and the Americans, the lead singer, and anyways, and he was managing Felix at the same time. He was also thinking of managing Leslie West in the Vagrants. So there was like a triumphant there. So Felix, it's a quick story. Ahmet Ertegun, way back in the mid-'60s, he was the guy, Atlantic Records. And Bud Prager says, why don't you go hang out at Atlantic Records, see if you can get a production. You have Tom Dowd, you got the studios. And Felix hung out there. Coincidentally, one day Robert Stigwood walks in and wants Atlantic to take the Bee Gees, and Ahmet says, well, you know, I don't know, you know, and Robert said, I'll throw in this new band, Cream, if you know, because Ahmet wanted the Bee Gees. They were just breaking wide open on Polydor. So Ahmet says, okay, you know what? If you give us the Bee Gees, we'll give Cream 10 days in the studio. This is back in '66. And what happened at the same time Felix was produced but the way Felix was produced, we were his audition for Ahmet. And now, you know what I mean? It was really weird because we didn't know this at the time, but Ahmet's favorite song was When I Fall in Love by Nat King Cole. And Ahmet said, you know what, Felix, before you do anything, why don't you give me a version, produce a version, pick a band. Pick a band and see what you can do to my favorite song. See how you can bring it to life. So Felix comes from, you know, from McDougal Alley in New York to Montreal because Energy had a singer who was very much like Gene Pitney. Great, he had a great voice, Gary Shipp. And Felix says, great. Felix didn't care about the band, he wanted the voice. So Felix produced When I Fall in Love. He had a New York Philharmonic string section, and Felix played a piccolo at the time, that trumpet. And the piccolo at that time was big time because of Penny
Penny
Lane.
Penny Lane,
Yeah,
right.
So Felix said we're going to put, and it's a beautiful production, you know, really pop, the four. And he got the audition, and he went to produce Cream. But there's energy sitting there waiting for Felix to produce him. So at the time, I'm losing track. We had the Felix producing energy. He did a couple of songs. And then when he heard a couple of original songs, he said, we played him Who Am I But You and the Sun, which is a song that George, Gary, and myself wrote. It was sort of a hippie song. Who am I but you, you know, kind of. And he loved the melody. And he eventually asked Leslie if he could sing it at Woodstock. Leslie was playing Woodstock.
A lot of people don't know that Mountain was at Woodstock.
Woodstock, yeah. But the point is, I'm always asked, were you at Woodstock? Which I'm not going to answer. No, anyway,
Shortly
I'm
thereafter.
rambling now. I'm rambling now because I had 17 coffees on the way up here. Anyways, what happened was Felix sang Who Am I But You and the Sun at Woodstock. It's on the Woodstock record. I was on the beach in Nantucket because Energy was playing in Nantucket at one of the beach clubs. And I remember Nicky, my buddy, says, hey, you know, I hear there's something going on in upstate New York. You know, you want to go? I said, oh, that's at Wood. You know what? Leslie's playing with Felix. I think Felix said he's going to sing that song. So I'm there in spirit, right? If you can. Okay. Fast forward. When the Americans landed on the moon in August, I landed on the seat in Mountain because Leslie and Felix said, well, let's get this band together. You got Steve Knight and myself, and that was it. 21 years old, there I was in Mountain.
Wow.
Really, so yeah, it was a big time. I come down from Montreal. The reason I'm telling you the story is we're in the studio, and I'm like living the life, you know, and there's a knock. We're at the record plant. There's a knock on the door. The producer next door is mixing the Woodstock record. And he came in, he says, you know, can we borrow a drummer? Because we don't have a drum track on Going Home 10 years after because Rick Lee's microphone somehow didn't work when they played that song.
No
Everything. And I said, Felix, you know, can you, go ahead, Cork, do it. So I go next door and in the studio, and I had the drum set, and I have to play on the track, right? So I said, I never heard of Going Home, and I never heard of 10 years after. At the time.
Oh, wow.
Well, it was just, they just had that great song, 20, you know, that beautiful song. Anyways, so I get on the drums, and I said, so how does it go? Going home, see my baby going home. And I said, wow, that's cool. So what's the chorus? Going home, see my baby.
And it goes on and on.
Well, there you go. So I said, how does it break out? Going home. So, but I didn't know it was 29 minutes long. So I'm there, and I don't know what Alvin absorbed that day at Woodstock, but he kept on speeding up so it starts up, going home, 5 minutes in, going home, see my baby going, 25 minutes, going home, and it goes crazy at the end. Now, blah, blah, baby, blah, blah, baby, blah, blah, baby. And I'm like, at the end, I go, oh, man. So I get up, and I said, you know what? I'm going home. Anyways, so I go home that week, and sure enough, knock on the door of my apartment. I just happened to have moved to Bleecker, and I had, you know, those days you had the brick walls in Greenwich Village, a little small little apartment. Anyways, the reason I mention that is the knock on the door, and they bring me a package, and it's a gold record for Going Home for Woodstock because I played the drums on it.
You know, I didn't even know that. I'm glad you shared
listen,
that story because people should know that. I didn't know that.
Going Home.
I was into they did their second record was a live record from something Creek.
Yeah.
And I had never heard anybody play as fast as Alvin Lee
He's an
back then.
amazing player.
You know, this was 68 or so that I heard that record, but I didn't know you played on the version
played it,
of
so they gave me a gold record.
That's terrific.
And I take the gold record and I put it on the wall. And I'm gold record first year. And then a week later, another knock on the door. And they opened the case, and it's another gold record from Woodstock for Yasker's Farm. I said, what's Yasker's Farm? Felix changed the name from Who Am I But You and the Sun to Schmooze Max Yasker, I can't even say it, who owned the land. So did I care? No.
That was the name I was familiar with, the rename.
The rename. Well, that's it. That's the song. So I take this gold record, and I put it up against the other gold record.
Now you're...
So Mark, here's the thing. I got 2 gold records for Woodstock, and I wasn't there.
That's amazing, Corky. That's amazing.
I have
It
to tell
really
that
is.
story over and over. But
It's
you
a
know
great
what?
story. And